done. I've done their tax for 5 years. I know a lot of their information. I'm going to be familiar with a certain amount of stuff, and then it really comes. It's more a question of, okay, were there any big changes this year? Did you have any new sources of income this year, right? And a lot of my clients, when they come in, I've been doing their taxes for 3, 5, 10 years plus. And our conversations are really more like, we're just catching up. What was new with you this year? From a tax point of view, were there any interesting developments, and so on and so forth. So it really depends on the case, but yeah, a lot of questions we will do over the phone. But when we deal with clients over the phone, we have to verify that it's actually them. So just like the CRA, depending on the situation, I might have to ask them some questions like, okay, can you prove that you are you by letting me know your address and postal code, or things like that. Obviously, some of my clients are just so distinctive that it's not I instantly recognize the voice over the phone, but in general, we do have to take precautions. When we're interviewing someone in person, of course, it's much simpler because they're right there. I can check their ID. I know they are them, and then we can ask those questions. But yeah, we do interview over the phone, but we do need to take some precautions in that case. All right, so again, we're finished with this page. We're going to calculate and continue. And we're going to go to the last section of questions before we get to tax documents. All right, and these are questions kind of for CRA tracking purposes. So the CRA wants to know, is this return being prepared under the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program? So, is this a return being done for free by volunteers? No. What language does IDA want to use? That's going to be English. Is IDA filing a return with the CRA for the first time? This is a very important question because if someone has never filed a tax return in Canada before, the CRA has no baseline to compare the personal information to, things like that. So it's necessary to indicate, yes, this is this person's first tax return in Canada. Assuming it's not, though, we want to put down no. Not answering that question correctly will lead to a file being rejected when you try to file it electronically, and other potential issues. Are we going to e-file any previous years? So we can go as far back as 2017 currently. So notice this allows us to e-file 7 years. So we can't currently go back all the way to do all 10 years electronically. 2015 and 2016 still have to be paper filed. Once we move into 2026, it'll no longer be possible to file 2015 to get a refund. So 2015 is going to become much less important, of course. But 2016 could conceivably, people could still be filing that. 2016 will have to be paper filed, but from 2017 forward, e-file can be used. When e-filing for previous years was first brought in, because it used to be you could only electronically file the current year. When it was first brought in, initially it was just you could only e-file the previous 3 years. Then in 2017, they managed to shift things so that from 2017 forward, it could be e-filed. And so we're now at the case where in 2026, you're going to be able to e-file 9 of the previous 10 years, which is, again, from the CRA point of view, remember they do almost 2 million paper returns. So being able to cut it down so that only returns that are 10 years old have to be paper filed is going to make a huge difference in the amount of paper that they are going to have to deal with. But in this case, we're only doing the current year, so the answer will be no. And IDA is not making an election or filing anything special like that with the return. IDA is not going to update their direct deposit information. Currently, direct deposit information cannot be updated through the tax return. This is a feature so it's always going to default to no. Notice that it is grayed out here. So something is grayed out. Typically, you do not have the option to change it without changing something else first anyway. Currently, the CRA does not allow you to update or change direct deposit information with the tax return. That may change in future, but this was a change which was made this year, which is why this is in the software for this year. The change happened around March. And did either of the following happen in 2024? Did IDA open a first-time home buyer savings account, or did they become a successor holder? Neither of those things happened. Okay, all right, so we're finished with this page. Notice that when we finish with the personal information on page 1, the gray strip on top now displays the person's name. This is intended so if you have multiple people open at once, for example, with a family, this is a visual cue to let you know whose return you are dealing with. Also, notice that kind of a running total of what the software estimates the refund or balance owing is going to be based on the information that's been entered so far. Right now, all the software knows is that Ida lives in British Columbia, is over 19, and has 0 income, and that means Ida currently qualifies for the BC sales tax rebate. This number we can expect to change as we enter more information into the return. Oops. So we're going to calculate and continue again. All right, now this screen, notice we finished with the client interview section here at left, and we are now in the IDA's tax document section. So here we can start to enter things. Now, we have the only section which has been added so far, and which is always added, is e-file information, which is pulled in from the government. Right now in this training database, we do not have the ability to pull in information from the government because, of course, this is not a real person. But that is a capability which the live software has. We're able to use represent a client to download information from the CRA. If we were to click on any field here, the pencil will allow you to edit the information here. So this is the information that we would download from the CRA normally. And notice there is a mandatory field that you have to say, yes, this matches what we saw in represent a client. So if you find yourself on this field, just select yes, so that the software is happy. But of course, in the training environment, we are unable to download that information from the CRA because this is, again, not a real person. Now we want to use this page to enter our T-slips and other information. Now because while we are just talking about it, let's look at that labor-sponsored funds entry for British Columbia. So going back to the textbook for British Columbia, we want to select British Columbia Employee Venture Capital Tax Credit. Okay, so on tax documents and worksheets, so notice you can begin typing a related word. So in this case, so BC or EM for employee. Let's try that. So EM. So notice, because we've already selected British Columbia, by default, it should allow us to pull up things which apply for British Columbia. So if I pull in B, British Columbia Renters Tax Credit will appear here. It will not appear for if a different province has been selected. So Schedule 12, this is, by the way, how we select the provincial schedule for entering the home renovation tax credit. But in this case, what we want is the Employee Venture Capital Tax Credit. So notice once I select it, it appears here. The pencil will allow me to edit the fields for it and enter information. The 3 dots here will allow me to mark it for review or to delete it. I can also click here. Oh, interesting. In previous versions, if I wanted to delete it, I could select it and then do that. If you do delete it, you won't be able to get it back. But that function can be very useful if, for example, you accidentally download the same slip twice. All right, let's just put that back. So the employee venture capital tax credit comes up. Again, if I select B, it's going to help focus on British Columbia. All right, so now let's edit it. So the EBC 30 certificate number, we can just put in any old number. Normally we would have this from the form. We'll just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the amount shown on the EBC 30 is 3,000. Same as federal, and we will calculate and continue. All right, now what other things are we going to enter here? Now there are two, we're also going to enter some, now I just did that because we were just talking about it and I didn't want to lose track about it. Normally the first thing we want to enter though is going to be T4s. So typing in, now these can be downloaded federally in the live version of the software, but we can also enter them manually. If I put in T, all forms with a T will come up. Select T4 here. So again, clicking on it will automatically add one and we can enter it. Notice that once we select things, once we put things here, using the trash can here, so let's say I didn't want a particular T4, I can highlight it here, a trash can will appear up here, but I can also use the delete function down here. And again, that's useful if you duplicated a form. So for this T4, let's bring it in here. So we're going to, we have two here, one for, where is it? Skyline Restaurant. Skyline Restaurant. And then we're going to enter our various fields. Now, box 45, that is about dental care insurance. We don't have any information of that for this return, so we can, let's assume it's not eligible for dental care insurance. I'm just going to pull this over, give us a little more room. Box 10 is for the province of employment, so we can select BC or type. Box 29, it's the employment code. This is if someone has a various types of code. In box 29 for various kinds of self-employment, things like taxi drivers, things like that, which are outside the scope of this course, but that's what it's for. Box 28 is for if someone's exempt for CPP, EI, or PPIP. These don't apply in this case. The general design philosophy with this software is the fields appear on this page in the same order that they would appear on the T4, and more or less the same arrangement as they would on the T4. So the fields here are not numeric, they are in the order they appear on the T4. If you hover your cursor over, the hover text will appear to tell you what the field is for. So box 14, employment income, box 22, income tax deducted, and so on. So in this case, the box 14 income is 24,500. And the income tax deducted for British Columbia is 855. Right. Box 16 is 1249.50. And there is no CPP2 because the income is less. In this case, box 24 and box 26 are also going to be 24,500. So I believe we can copy and paste. And it doesn't object to the comma. If I put in a $sign, notice though it will object to the $sign. So commas and decimals are okay, $signs are not. Also, if I were to try to add a third decimal place and then move on, it would round. So be cautious about that. Okay, EI premiums in box 18 is 406.70. And box 44, union dues, no union dues in this case. And, box 45 is 1. Yep, we already entered that. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have entered 6 numerical fields, and that's all we need to do here. So no union dues, no RP contributions, no charitable donations, etc., etc. And notice there's a space down here to add boxes from the bottom of the T4, and you can add as many as necessary. So if, for example, someone had a box 40, other taxable allowance benefits, you could put that in there, and then you can add another box 85, premiums, you could add there, and so on and so forth. The X here, we'll just eliminate them. Notice that it gives no warning or anything like that, so be cautious. And as always, be cautious you're selecting the correct box number here. So you can select it from the drop down, or you can just type it in if it is a real number, for example, and then it'll allow you to select that. Okay, but we will. Now notice we can add another T4 or calculate and continue. Adding another T4 will have the same effect as calculating and continue. It'll simply add a second one. Notice it has added it over here on the left. So the second T4 in this case is for Fred's Gym. Fred's Gym. Now for Fred's Gym, the box 45 is 1. Box 10 is BC. And box 29 is blank. For Fred's Gym, the box 14 is 1245.80. The box 22 is 0, which is entirely possible because the income is so low. Box 16 is 4208. And box 18 is 2068. And box 24 and 26 are the same as box 14. So we can just copy and paste that. Now, box 24 and 26, in most software packages, if you leave those blank, the software will assume that they are the same as box 14, but obviously you want to be careful about that because that may not always be the appropriate solution. Okay, and 1, 2, 3. That is all we need to enter here for numerical entries here. There are no exotic boxes or anything like that. All right, so we can calculate and continue. So we've already entered the provincial labor-sponsored funds receipt. We want to enter the political contributions, and then we want to enter the tips. So for political contributions, again, we can find those in the textbook if we look for BC political contributions. Notice here there is a political contributions page. and it has a line for federal and a line for provincial. So that's easy enough. So we can just type in P for, and notice it'll bring up support payments and the political contribution tax credit, and it'll just appear down here under tax and credits, political contribution tax credit, and there's a line for federal and a line for provincial or territorial. So for the federal party, in this case, the federal political contribution is 600. The provincial one is 300. Then we're going to calculate and continue. Okay, and the last thing we want to enter are tips. Tips are $8,000. So we'll put in a T. Won't do it, so it's TI. Tips. Notice it says other income. Let's have a look here. Other income, let's have a look. So this is an example of the streamlining I was talking about. So in this software, putting in other income, bringing up other income, brings up the field for both other employment income from line 10400 and other income from 13000. So this is something you, having taken this course, you're familiar with the difference between them, but for other people, this might trip them up, or they might not realize that to enter tips, you need to simply pull up other income, even though it's other employment income. So in this case, however, we can simply put in IDA's tips up here, $8,000 on the field dedicated to tips. Notice there's another field for any other employment income not on a slip. And then there are two lines down here for GST rebates or other miscellaneous income, which would go on line 13000. All right, GST rebates here. This is not the quarterly checks. This is from a GST 370 form, which is something different. All right, so 8,000, we're going to calculate and continue. And we've entered both T4s, we've entered the labor-sponsored funds credit, we've entered the federal and provincial political contributions, and we've entered the tips. So, presumably, we've now downloaded their information from Represent a Client, and we can now hit Calculate and Continue. We've now moved to the Review section. The first section is what's called Optimization, which for a single taxpayer, we don't need to worry too much about. But for, say, a couple, this is where we would select which member of the couple is going to claim certain credits. So in this case, we're going to assume that IDA would want to claim these if IDA is eligible. So we're going to say to claim them because we know of no reasons other than income that IDA might not qualify. So we're going to claim those, and then we're going to calculate and continue. And notice that takes us to the next page, which is errors and warnings. There are no errors and warnings here that we need to worry about. Then for credits, this just gives a kind of top-level overview of some of the various credits in the return. So the net federal tax, the income tax deducted, the basic personal amount, and so on and so forth. This page, for me, I find most useful as just a quick way of looking at something and seeing if a given credit is showing up. Are the employee investment tax credits showing up? Yeah, is the BC tax deduction showing up? And so on. So the federal political contribution tax credit is showing up. Okay, so most of the things we are expecting to find here are showing up. And notice that right now it shows IDA with a balance of $45 owing. When we go to this page, we have some summaries which are available. So IDA's tax story is kind of a top level overview you can share with the client. So this shows that Ida had $33,745.80 in total income. Her net income is slightly less. There were no deductions for taxable income. And then it talks about the main non-refundable credits that appear. Notice the political contribution tax credit, the labor-sponsored funds credit. These all show up here. And the Canada Workers Benefit is also appearing down here. So once everything goes through, we have the refund or balance owing, which in this case is $45.29. So from this page, you can either download it or print it or continue. Just continue for now. The tax summary view gives us all the same information, but in a more of a column format, so you can just go through line by line. Personally, as a tax preparer, I find this a little bit more useful. Okay, because this allows me to show things. So notice for the labor-sponsored funds tax credit, the net cost of the shares is entered here, and then the total tax credit is the $450 down here. And so we can work through and see everything. The Canada Workers Benefit 483.04 has also been applied, and so the balance owing is $45.29. Now, if we want to look at the form, you can click Preview up here, and it'll show you IDAS T1. And it'll automatically download it to your computer, and then you can skip ahead to, you can navigate and skip to various points if you want to see a given form. I find this view very helpful when to see if something is showing up where it should be. So for that labor-sponsored funds tax credit, say, if I want to check on that, then I would expect to see it down here. So $3,000 labor-sponsored funds tax credit with an allowable credit of $450. Okay, that makes sense. That's where it should be. If I want to look at the provincial, the Canada Workers Benefit, Schedule 6, shows up here. If I want more detail about that. The Advanced Canada Workers Benefit, none was received in the year, so it's not going to come up this year. What I would like to do, though, is look at the BC 428, which is going to be after all the federal forms, of course, way down here, after the federal worksheet. The BC 428 will be down, way down here. Oh, the federal political contribution credit. So notice that's in the worksheet there. So all the details from the return you can get by downloading it here. And for the BC tax on the BC 428, the labor-sponsored funds tax credit, I would expect to see here, right? So the EBCC 30 certificate number should appear there. Then the tax credit amount indicated, the $3,000 here. Notice it's a maximum of $2,000, so that $2,000 is going to come up here. All right, so there we go. Now from this page, we can continue. The last part of the file is where we would do if we wanted to file something electronically. We would indicate something if a fee was charged, and then we would generate what's called a T183 form. Now, this form you haven't seen before. Talked about it much, but it's very important. This is a mandatory form which is prepared when anyone files a return through a tax preparation service such as H&R Block. So the person's identification is at the top, There's a section to add someone's email address if they want to sign up for my account. We did not indicate that she wanted to. It has the key lines from the return, so the total income, taxable income, and the refund or balance owing. It has the electronic filers identification, H&R Block Canada in this case. There's a document control number. The person indicates whether they want to receive something electronically or receive paper notification, and then they sign the bottom. So we in the tax office would print this out, get the person, explain it to them, get the person to sign it, and we cannot file this return unless we have their signature, either in person or electronic, on this document. On the back, one thing that not everyone is aware of is there's a specific line in here where the person is authorizing the electronic filer to correct errors in the return, providing that the refund or balance owing is not changed by more than $300. And that's very useful because sometimes someone will come in, they'll sign off on something, they'll leave the office, and then we'll discover something new, or a new form will arrive, or something like that. So as long as we have this form signed, they don't need to come in and sign the form again. We can just make the change and to correct the error, and then send in the return without it. All right. But that's basically the steps of it. So after someone has downloaded and signed something, then a field would come available allowing us to electronically file the return. But of course, this is not a real return. It's not a real person, so we cannot electronically file something. But that would be the last step here. Tools. Oh, yeah, you don't need to worry about that. Forget you saw that. I believe that's because I'm a writer, it comes up. But yeah, you don't need to worry about that. Okay. All right. You should not have access to that, is what I'm saying. And if you do happen to, just ignore it. It's kind of a behind the scenes editor. All right. So that, I think, is the major points for IDA. Okay. So on that note, so I've had a chance to show you all the major points for it. On that note, it's about time for us to take a break because it's 7:30. So let us then take a 15-minute break. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. So we're going to pause, return. We're going to take a break for 15 minutes. We'll just get back in it. All right. So welcome back, everyone. We've completed our break, and now we're going to look at exercise 1-2, and we're going to get as far as we can with it by 9 o'clock. Experience suggests that it's a little unpredictable how much time things will take because it depends what kinds of questions we get, but we will get as far as we can and try to show you the basics of how we handle a return with more than one person and how that is handled in this software environment. All right, let me just check something here. Okay. Perfect. Now, let's go back to our Block Pro. Oh, no. Well, I can certainly do that. Yes. There we are. Okay, so we are finished with IDA, so we're going to calculate and save one last time, and then we are going to close that out and close that out, and we will reset practice. We'll start a new one. Now, for this one, puts me into writer view. We don't want that. We want student view. Okay, and again, filter by BC, filter one, and we are going to just, and again, if we put in exercises, exercise, it will show us these guys. So for this one, we're doing a student, Emily Chase, and her parents, Reed and Benita Chase. In this type of scenario, notice that the student will have her own tax return and her parents will have a separate tax return. So everything flows from this. We will begin with the student's tax return. Okay, so for they do want me to mention it's technically possible to create a dependent return and also start the coupled return for Benita and Reed and jump back and forth between the returns to work on them simultaneously. This isn't recommended, and it's not really it's not a practice that we use in the office. That tends to uh, lead to trouble if we have it. All right. Notice when I hit practice, it brought me back to IDA here. And I don't really want that. So let's close that and reset the practice. So that should give me a blank return here. Yes, there we go. All right. And the reason we start with a dependent return is that this allows us to calculate exactly how much is available for transfer and other credits. So in this case, Emily is going to be transferring tuition to her father and also has a medical expense receipt that's going to be claimed by the parents. All right, so let's put in Emily's name here, just as we did before. So that's Emily Chase. And again, in the live tax office, we would be checking someone's ID to make sure it's actually them and make sure there's no errors. And we would be checking the social insurance number and other information against that. And if someone does not have ID, we cannot do their taxes, which, believe it or not, does sometimes come as a surprise to people who arrive without ID or without a social insurance number, and we have to explain, sorry, without a social insurance number, we can't do anything for you, and without ID, we also can't do anything for you, and just legally speaking, the ID is necessary to make sure the person is who they say they are, and without a social insurance number, you cannot even really begin the return. Okay. All right. So for Emily, her date of birth is March 16th, 2005. So this is exercise 1-2. Okay. And remember, for anyone who happened to skip ahead to this point in the recording, remember the exercises are in the textbook. And I'm going to be pulling some information directly from the textbook to show you. So in this case, and remember the exercises for anyone who joined us late, they are right at the end of the textbook, and the textbook here is Block Pro for Tax Academy Level 1. Right, so first one we're going to be doing then is for Emily Chase, and she lives at 23 Maple Lane in your province. So social insurance number is 870-022-555. The birth date is March 16th, 2005, 1603-2005. Did not change her surname, and there is no legal representative. And this isn't a return for someone who is deceased. The mailing address is in Canada. And 23 Maple Lane, so there is no unit number, but there is the street number, which is 23, and it is Maple Lane. There is no post office box, no rural route identifier, and again, this is for Vancouver. And it's for BC. and B2V2V2 or something similar to that. And Emily's mailing address didn't change. She did not reside outside of Canada, and her province of residence is BC. Home address is the same as the mailing address. She did not move to a different province or territory. And again, as I said before, if I were asking these questions to somebody in person, it kind of makes it a little lighter if we go through quickly and just say, I just need to, this software is very question driven, so I need to ask you some questions. For example, were you a diplomat or agent of a foreign country? Were you in prison? Did you sell your principal residence? Did you flip a property that you owned less than 365 days? And so on and so forth. Did she own any property outside Canada? No. Is she a Canadian citizen? Yes. And does she want Elections Canada, CRA, to provide Elections Canada with her address information? Yes. And BC Transplant, there's no information here, so we would assume the answer to be no. Phone number 555-334-5810. All right. Emily's marital status, single. Did this change in 2004, and does she have any dependents? No. All right, so we're going to calculate and continue. And again, I'm moving a little briskly here just because I want to get as far as we can by 9 o'clock. Was Emily a volunteer, firefighter, or other emergency services volunteer? No. Does she have a disability? No. And various other credits that she might qualify for, but we have no indication that any other credits are in play here. The only unusual thing that isn't on a T-slip is $800 from casual labor. So teaching supply expenses will be zero. Home buyer's amount won't apply. She doesn't belong to a religious order. She doesn't have any additional deductions. There's no labor-sponsored funds tax credit. No unusual employment expenses. No wage loss replacement plan. And she didn't have any digital news subscriptions and doesn't have any other deductions. Again, notice her name, Emily, appears up here. When we work on the parent's return, the coupled return, we're going to keep Emily's return open, and we're going to have a new tab, and in this tab, and we're going to work on the parents in another tab, by the way. So having the name appear at the top up there is going to be helpful for navigating back and forth. But first, we're going to complete Emily, at least as far as we can. And Emily lives with her parents while attending university. If that's good, we're going to be using all this information again when we get there. Okay, so we're going to calculate and continue. And for the administrative type questions, again, a volunteer did not work on the return. She wants to use English. We can assume this is not the first time she's filing a return, and she's not e-filing anything, and there is no election involved. She's not going to start direct deposit, and we know that she has not opened an FHSA. Notice that if we try to move on too quickly, it will give us a warning in yellow that we need to answer this question. Right, again, we will calculate and continue. And now we are at Emily's tax documents. So again, for those of us, anyone who joined us late, in a live environment, we would now be able to do things like access Represent a Client and download some of Emily's tax information from the CRA into the return. If Emily was a new client with us, we would first upload an authorization form telling the CRA that Emily has authorized us as a representative, and then we would be able to use Represent a Client. If this were Emily's first year filing, however, the CRA would accept the authorization but would not release information to us because it is her first year filing and they don't have enough information of a baseline to confirm that this is actually her from their end. All right. So now we're going to add in the various tax documents as we did for exercise 1. For Emily, there is a T4A, a T2202, and there is some casual labor. Okay, so for the T2202, remember, again, T will bring up the list of T slips. If we were to type in 2202, it wouldn't do it. But if you typed in T2202, you would get it. If we were to type in tuition, then you would get various things to do with tuition, including the T2202. So most software packages use various keywords to search on various fields. This is how Block Pro does it. If you're using other tax software, it'll have some similar mechanism in all likelihood. You kind of get used to what keywords work with what software package. Oh, that does remind me, by the way, for hotkeys, remember we mentioned the hotkeys before. We do want to see how those work live. For the hotkeys, it is Control-Shift-K, and then this will bring up your various hotkeys that you can access. So again, it'll go away unless you're holding it down. And Control-S will calculate and save. That's a very useful one, actually. At least it should. Calculate and save. There we go. All right. F3 takes us to the tax documents page. So for over here, we can hit F3. Now, depend if you've got a laptop like I do, you need to hit the function key and F3, and then it will take you there. All right. Anyway, so for Emily, we are going to put in tuition. So we're going to put in the T2202. And we need to enter information for her. So the designated educational institution is Your City University. So that would be Vancouver University. Of course, you can put in your favorite school here, because this is just for practice after all. Vancouver University, and box 13 is a Bachelor of Science. Box 11 is the type of school, which in this case is university, or 1. Box 12 is only used for flying schools or clubs, so we can leave this blank. Box 14 is the student number, which in this case we have in the exercise is 78684. And whoops. In box 14, 78684. And for box 15, that is the filer account number. So that would be taken from the form itself, but this is for information purposes only. We have not provided one with the exercise. Box 26 is the tuition itself. And notice the hover text will appear if you just hover your cursor over a given box. So box 25 is the number of full-time months, which is 8. And box 26 is the tuition fees, which is $6,800. 6,800. Right, so we're going to calculate and continue. Oh, a question. Diane asked, could I have entered 1 in box 11? Let's see. 1. Yeah, if I try to type in 1, it'll give university. So if I put in 2, it's in college. Okay, so there we go. Most tax software packages have their own little idiosyncrasies around entering data in fields. So and they can change from year to year and version to version. So you will acquire a kind of muscle memory depending on the software package you're using. So every year they do some tweaks to Block Pro, and the government changes the forms, of course. So it's always good. I like to test things out and see what they can do. So in this case, typing in a 1 will give you that result as well. Okay, so that's it for this. We're not going to add another T2202, so we can calculate and continue. And now we need to add a T4A. T4A will give us the T4A, and then we edit that. Again, notice it will have the relevant fields for a T4A more or less in the order that they would appear on the form. So in this case, it is from Vancouver University. And scholarships and bursaries and similar payments are always in box 105 in the modern T4A. So that's going to be down here in the open form field. So we can select from the list or just type in 105. And that amount is going to be 7,000. Right, and then we will just calculate and continue. Notice that because it is a scholarship, we now need to specify what it is for. And notice that the options available here, full-time or part-time, this is not information which actually appears on the T4A. What we are indicating here is whether she is a full-time or part-time student, or whether this was for a primary secondary school scholarship, or whether this is something else, like an artist's grant, a postdoctoral fellowship, or another type of scholarship. So if she hadn't gone to university, did not have a tuition form, and was just receiving some sort of scholarship or academic prize, then we would select that. In this case, it's a full-time scholarship, fellowship, or bursary, and we will calculate and continue. All right, now her carry forward, then we're going to need to put those in here. Now, tuition carry forward. Notice that there's nowhere to enter in the carry forward here on the T2202. Students, based on what you know, what form would we enter the carry forward on? Because it doesn't appear on the T2202. If you had to guess, or if you're very quick on looking this up in a textbook, what tax form do you think we're going to select to enter the carry forward? Excellent, the Schedule 11. So if we put in S, we will see the Schedule 11. And we can now edit this. Notice that we are not seeing the Schedule 11 itself. We're simply seeing the fields that we would edit on a Schedule 11. So if there is a Canada training credit limit, we would enter that here. If she doesn't want to claim the full CTC, we would enter the actual amount here. And then we enter the unused federal and provincial tuition amounts here. So in this case, federally, it's $3,450. Provincially, it is going to be $2,300. We'll calculate and continue. And then we need to indicate the province that she lived in. Oh, interesting. I will play with that later. So I want to know the effect of that. Actually, I want to see if it applies the rule. So I'm going to say it was Alberta last year, because what it should do is update the provincial amount to match the federal one. Ah, it looks like it did. So the BCS 11 updates to 3450. Oh, good. Okay. Good, 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 good. It's applying the correct provincial rule. Okay. All right. But she is a resident of BC last year, so the 2300 will stay in effect. All right. And I think I've got everything in here for Emily. And what we're going to want to now, when we're done with her tax documents, we can calculate and continue. Notice it takes us to the optimization tab, and we need to indicate if she had any income. So she had no income in 2024, right? Remember, the scholarship doesn't appear as income because she's a full-time student. So we would indicate she had no income in 2024. And we can say that she wants to claim the BC sales tax credit. Notice it's already appearing up here by default. That's $75. And down here, it will indicate how much she can transfer. Oh, the 800. We want to make sure that's in there. That's right. That's right. It's on the first page. So we'll undo that. Let's do that now while we're thinking of it. Notice it'll prompt you if you need to save your changes. Okay, so let's go back here. All right, and remember what do we type in to enter casual income? Other income? Line 10400. Let's try 10400 here. So notice 10400 will add in other income, right? Even though 10400 doesn't appear in the list, it does show up at the top of it. Interestingly, other forms which might need it will also come up. So other income, we'll just add this down here then. And employment income, not on the slip. And again, that was 800. Okay, there we go. So now when we go to review, right, so now the no income flag doesn't appear at all. Now for transferring amounts, it will automatically calculate how much can be transferred, which in this case is 5,000 federally and provincially. And notice it gives us the option. Does she want to transfer them to somebody else? Oh, now that is interesting. Does she either want to change the amounts or transfer them? Let's say yes. Who does she want to transfer? Let's transfer to a parent. And we want to, so if we tick the box, it'll automatically be 5,000. If we want to change the amount, click on the lock to unlock it, and then you can put in a different amount. Okay, but interesting. All right. Now notice it would then send us back to what's called the send worksheet. And you remember from the first one, this is the one where we would confirm that the information in the client in the return matches what we saw in the CRA's represented client. Now we could sign in here If you click that here, it will send you to your CRA account, but obviously do not do that. But you can see how that would work. It would allow you to sign in and check someone's information. All right, we don't need to do that here, but you can see the intention of the functionality. Obviously, this is not a real person, so if we were to sign in to represent a client, they would all that would happen is that they would inform us that this is not a valid social insurance number, right? And yes, we need to say yes, that it matches. However, just to dismiss that error, and that takes us back to everything. Okay, good. So now we've done what we need to with Emily. Emily is going to have a $75 tax refund. All right, now let's move to Reed and Benita. Okay, so we can just calculate and save here. It's taking a little time. But while that's doing that, we should be able to just open a new one. Now, if we click practice, that will simply take us to Emily's return. I don't want to do that. So instead, we will go to Reed and Benita's over here. So doing it that way will allow us to simply enter the return. Okay, so for Reed and Benita Chase, Reed Chase, and Reed social insurance number 870-012-135. Reed's date of birth is August 1st, 1976. Reed did not change his surname. And now you put in his street address, which is again 23 Maple Lane. So 23 Maple Lane, and city, Vancouver. The province is C, and V2V2V2. And client did not reside outside of Canada. Province territory residence is BC. Home address, same as mailing address. And for Reed, is a Canadian citizen, and yes to the Elections Canada question, but no to everything else. So not a foreign diplomat, was not imprisoned, did not sell a principal residence or flip a house, doesn't own any foreign property, but yes to Canadian citizenship, yes to the Elections Canada question, no to the BC transplant question. Reed's phone number is 555-334-2712. And all right, now this is our first married taxpayer that we've dealt with. So we will enter Reed's marital status here as married. And notice this opens up a bunch of other questions. So did Reed's marital status change? No, this isn't a new status. Did they separate and get back together in the year? No. So notice these are all questions to deal with things around support and similar questions. So at any time in 2024, did Reed stop financially supporting his partner? Were they living apart for medical reasons? Do they want to do a coupled return? Yes. So this means we are now going to be able to add the spouse's information in a moment. And do they have any dependents to claim for 2024? Yes. All right. Now, guys, I'm going to get you guys to feed me the information from over here. Okay, as we go through, and that'll save me some of the jumping back and forth. And again, we will get as far as we can by 9 o'clock or so. Okay, so the first dependent, so we're going to want Emily in here. So we'll put in Emily first, Emily Chase. And Emily's social insurance number, again, 870-022-555. Required if dependent has a social insurance number. Remember, some younger dependents may not have one, or at least the client may not have access to one, although it's pretty standard for most children born in Canada now to get one at the hospital at the time of birth, or certainly thereafter. Right. So birthday, March 16th, 2005. And the dependent is the client's child. And are there any months of shared custody or other arrangements? Nope, nothing like that. Right, now we're going to add another dependent. All right, dependent number 2. Okay, so what dependent number 2, what is their first name, everybody? Well, I can go look, that's fine. Okay, so this is, of course, Luke Chase. There's no social insurance number or anything like that. Luke, thanks, Valerie. Okay, and the birthday is May 24th. All right. Oh, and what's the year for Luke? What's his birth year? And remember, that's going to have an effect if there's any childcare expenses or anything like that. So 2020, so Luke's relatively young, and Luke is the dependent's child. Good. And no shared custody or anything like that. All right, and that is it for dependents. Notice that when we click this here, suddenly a bunch of fields have opened up for the spouse. So over here, so we're going to finish with Reed, and then we'll move on to Vanita. Okay, but these questions are going to go fairly quickly. Reed, not an emergency services volunteer, no disability. All right, and guys, stop me if any of these the answer is yes, but I don't recall there being any teaching supply expenses. Did they buy a house? I don't think so. No religious order claim. There's no additional deductions. No labor-sponsored funds deduction. No unusual employment expenses. Any wage loss replacement plan benefits? I don't think so. Digital news subscription? I don't think so. I don't think there were any other deductions. But of course, you guys will let me know if I've missed anything. The returns not being done under the volunteer income tax program. English to be used is going to be English. Not filing return for the first time. There's no special election or anything like that. And Reed did not open an FHSA. So we will calculate and continue. Notice now it takes us to the spouse automatically. Notice there's been a change in the color of the top bar to indicate a spouse. So here we are going to put in Benita. What's her social insurance number, everybody? And what's her date of birth? Okay, so good. So 870-014-388. Eight seven zero zero one four 388. And birthday is May 31st, 1977. There we are. No change of surname. No legal representative. Spouse's mailing address is the same as Reed's. And province or territory of residence is the same. Home address is the same as the mailing address. And again, the basic questions are going to parallel Reed's. So Benita doesn't work for a foreign country, wasn't in prison, didn't sell a principal residence, doesn't own foreign property, has Canadian citizenship, I believe. You guys will let me know if I'm misremembering. Yes to the Elections Canada question, and no to the BC Transplant question. Obviously, in the tax office, we would confirm all of this with the client. Spouses can make their own choice, and their choice is not dependent on what their spouse decides, of course. All right. Phone number, I believe it was Reed's. Let me know if it was something different, which is 555-334-2712. The CRA typically doesn't need the phone number to be put on most of forms. It's not required to be entered on the T1, for example. There's only a few things where it is entered for, such as the T1135. So we collect it for that purpose. But we also use it in order to contact clients. So most tax software may collect some information like that just for record keeping purposes for the organization. But do be aware in any piece of software why something's being collected and what it's for. So, for example, Reed's email we have here, that would only be entered on the T183 if he wanted to sign up for online mail, for example. Again, we'll hit calculate and continue. And Benita, again, not an emergency services volunteer, no disability amount, and none of the other credits here. So she didn't work as a teacher, is not claiming the home buyer's amount, doesn't belong to a religious organization, so on and so forth. All right, and this return is not being done by volunteers. English is the language we're going to use. Not filing a return with the CRA for the first time, and we're not filing an e-file for previous years. And she's not making any elections, and she didn't open an FHSA. So now we have come to the tax document. So notice that by default, it's going to come to the first taxpayer first, which is for Reed, and then Benita, and then there are sections for Emily in Luke where we can enter various things. All right, let's have a look at the problem. Just to give a bit of an overview here. So for Reed, we've got T4 from Dependable Law. For Benita, there's a T4 from the Wine Cellar. Okay, and so each of them has a T4. Reed has a professional dues and GST rebate from the Notice of Assessment. Now this is interesting. We didn't touch on this much in the course, but if you have professional dues and they charge you GST for them, you can apply using a form called a GST 370 to indicate, and then you will get a refund of the GST portion of the professional dues. This I think I might enter right. I might do this right away just to show you how it's done. The investment income slips, he's got a T3. IMA fees, of course, this are investment management and accounting fees. So those be entered in there. There's a T5 from Bell Canada, a T5008 with a T-bill. Okay, so lots of stuff. Oh, and Luke was adopted. Okay, so there's some information there and some childcare expenses for Luke as well. And then we have some medical expenses by Reed and Benita, as well as some for Emily, which are going to use her net income. So there's quite a lot going on in this return. Then we've got some charitable donations and so on. Okay, I think I'm going to zoom in first on the GST rebate stuff because this, I think, is the one which might be trickiest for you if we were to run out of time. Okay, so professional dues, let's deal with that first. So 384.83. So we're going to put this in under read. So for dues, annual union, typing in dues will give us annual union, professional, or like dues here. So we'll put in the 384.83. It doesn't like the dollar sign, so we'll remove that. And notice what we would say is this amount eligible for a GST HST rebate, right? In other words, did it have GST included in this figure? So we would say yes. Then we would enter the eligible GST amount. Now that's interesting. So the question is, how much of this includes GST on it? 384.83. So the entire amount was subject to GST. And then the employer. Now, what was Reed's employer again? Was it dependable law? Does that sound right? Okay. And then we would enter the business number. And if there were any professional premiums or overpaid dues that were reimbursed. Okay. Okay, so the professional or like dues will show up here. And then under the client interview, tax interview portion, the GST reimbursements. Hmm. So it's not under personal information. Of course, so one. So it should then be under here. Why is it not jumping out at me? Hmm. Bear with me, students. we would use the GST 370 form. That's not what we're using here, though. Don't think it's necessary in this case. Remember to delete it. We can just simply tick that and delete it. Oh, hang on. Stay signed in for Emily. For union dues. And again, remember, if we ever have trouble finding things, we can also search them in here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just skimming this. Yes, here we are. So if it was received in a prior year, it's under other income. Yes, I knew I saw it. Okay, so for that, we're going to need to enter other income as a type of other income. And again, that amount here was for 1833. Okay. Uh, yeah, other income, GST rebates 1833. Okay, right, let's see. So for read, now T4s I've already showed you. It's a simple matter of entering them under each of them. I think what I would like to do, let's have a look at some of the more unusual things. So we're going to look at the adoption expenses and then the child care expenses. So adoption expenses for Luke and child care expenses. So for adoption expenses then, we're going to look at this section. Again, just because we're running we've only got 15 minutes, so I don't want to show you the T4s, which are relatively easy. I want to show you the things which take a little more time. So for Luke, at any time in 2024, did he live with Reed or Benita? Yes. And did he live with them in the end of the year? Yes. And was he infirm? No. And did the dependent have any income in 2024? No. Right, so we are going to add. So notice we can add the sections that apply to Luke. So we're going to add adoption expenses, going to add medical expenses, and going to add child care expenses. And tuition amount transferred from a child, we're going to use that with Emily. Okay, so for the adoption expenses, notice it'll want you to save changes before you enter that. So notice it brings up a list of the various expenses that are required. Now notice the actual date of the adoption itself, there isn't a space to enter that. Presumably that would have already been filed using a form RC66 to let the CRA know about this new dependent. If one wasn't filed, the CRA would send out a letter saying, hey, we noticed that you have a dependent who wasn't born this year. Can you give us more information about that? All right, so for Luke, we would just enter in his fees here. So have a look at the fees and tell me what I need to put in. Were there any legal expenses? So 2,600. Any travel expenses for Luke and or his escort? And notice how it's broken down. So travel expenses for Luke, and then also travel expenses for Luke's escort if it's not Reed and Benita, or travel expenses for anybody else. Were there any translation fees for the documentation? Okay. Any organization fees through an agency fees? So 4,200 for parents. So is that for travel for the parents? Notice that is entered here. For adoption fees, 87.50. Right. So, all right. And anything else? Any other fees? I think that might be it. Okay, good. Right. So you can see it's fairly straightforward. When you have a dependent and you want to enter information for them, you would simply first you go to the dependent down here, and then you enter the information on the specific form. So for Luke, we will for childcare expenses. So let's have a look at that. I think this might be relatively quick. For the childcare expenses, it's for Sandra Smith, who lives at 25 Maple Lane. Wait a minute. Oh, that's 2 doors down. Okay. And that's 1950. Okay, so that's easy enough to put in. So childcare expenses deduction, the type of childcare expense is a childcare by an individual. We need to put in Sandra Smith in 1950. And social insurance number, it's going to want that. The social insurance number here is 870-000 and then 353. Right. Go. And for medical expenses for a dependent, let's have a look at the medical expenses. So for the medical expenses, so we've got medical expenses paid by Reed and paid by Benita, and we've got some different dates here. Now, the one in 2022 is going to be too old to claim. Notice what happens when I try to put in something that's too old. So we go back here, and we will notice the medical expenses for the dependent can be entered down here. If we were to put them up here, as you might imagine, the keyword is medical expenses. For the core family, if you put in the medical expenses, you could enter them under one person or under different ones. Typically, it's better to, depending on how many expenses there are, it can be easier to track them if you put the specific expense under a specific person. If, however, I were to try to put in one which was simply too old, so December 9th, 2022, Dr. Fang for 700. So let's put in December 9th, 22. So 2022. It will throw up a red flag and say, it needs to be between January 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2024. But it will not be able to optimize dates. If you simply put in the expenses for all the various dates, currently it's not able to optimize the optimal 365-day period. So if we look at the expenses here, so we can see we have got some on September 5th, 2023 for Reed, all the way up to November 15th for Reed, and then for Benita, February 18th, 2024, September 19th, 2024, and then Emily's got one October 12th, 2024. And remember, if it's a dependent who is over 18, so they are on that separate line, they still have to use the same 12-month period as the rest of the family. So with all that in mind, then, let's ask the question. Yeah. What range of medical expenses should be claimed by the Chase family? December 9th, 2022 to December 31st, 2024. December 9th, 2022 to December 8th, 2023. I don't think we're going to be choosing those two. It's going to be September 5th, 2023 to December 31st, 2024. September 5th, 2023 to September 4th, 2024. Or January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024. When I look at this, I think I can logically select what's probably going to be, well, I can tell that some of these answers are definitely wrong. Okay, you've got about 5 seconds left. All right, so remember, January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024 would be simply using the calendar year. If we were to use something that from 2023, however, we are still restricted to a 365-day period. So option C, September 5th, 2023 to December 31st, 2024, is invalid. So options A, B, and C then are invalid. A and B are too old, and C is more than 365 days. So it really comes down to then, do we need to include September 5th or not? And in this case, the correct answer is E, January 1st to December 31st. So if we have a look at that, get back here. There we go. So September 5th, right, this is really the only one from 2023 which might be available. And it's only for $89, which is pretty marginal. And by claiming that, you'd be unable to claim the one on November 15th, for example, for $2,000. So we are going to be claiming these other ones here. All right, now Emily has one October 12th for $156. Notice, although Emily has her own separate return going on, in order to claim the family's medical expenses correctly, we're going to want to enter this under Emily here. So under Emily, so for Emily, right? Notice that for Emily, we're going to need to enter her income, which I think was 800, wasn't it? Casual labor? Yes, 800. I don't think there were any deductions from that. And so for Emily, notice we can put in the medical expenses and the tuition amount that's being transferred. So for the medical expenses, right, how much was it again? It was $156, and what was it for? It was for prescription drugs from Pharma Plus, and it was on October 12th. $56. And notice there are specific call-outs for unusual medical expenses here. Notice, there we go. You can add additional medical expenses as you like. Calculate and continue here. There we go. Thanks, Valerie. All right. And the other thing we want to do for Emily is the tuition amount being transferred. And this was $5,000 and $5,000. Calculate and continue. There we go. All right. Well, so it's 8:56. I think those are that. As I thought we've run a bit short of time, but you can work at this at home, play around with it, see the various things. So entering the various T-slips, I think, is fairly straightforward. Just type in T4, enter your fields under the appropriate person. T3, T5, even the T508 is fairly straightforward. And for charitable donations, you can enter that under either of them. So Gurjinder is asking if there is a class on Monday. No, there is not a class on Monday, not to worry. The idea, let's look at our schedule. So there isn't going to be class on Monday for the next couple of weeks in order to give you guys time to work with the software. So our next class, therefore, is going to be next Wednesday, November 26th, and then the next one after that is going to be the next Wednesday, December 3rd. And so we're giving you the Mondays off in order to work with the software, play around with the software. So next time, we're going to be reviewing case studies 1 and 2, and I'm going to be demonstrating exercise 3 and well, if we have time, exercise 4. So I'm going to be reviewing exercise 1-3 at least, and case studies 1 and 2. All right. Let's see. Pull back here to here we are. Okay. So yeah. So at home, play around with exercise 1 and 1-1, 1-2 if you like. 1-3 I'm going to show you next week. But if you want to play around with 1-3 and 1-4, you can. They, as you would imagine, they get a little bit more complicated. The case studies, though, these are for you to work on. So we're going to give you a couple to work on this week, and then the last 3 to work on the following week. All right. How do you access the software? No need, Dial Muhammad. For anyone who came in late, the software is accessible through ULearn after you have finished the exam, right? So if it is not appearing in your transcript in ULearn, then after the exam is finished, just contact there's contact information in the learner guide for tech support, but it should appear in your transcript once you've finished the exam, completed and submitted the exam. And of course, because the exam's due today, some of you might not have done that yet. All right. But yes, if you've completed the exam, everything seems to have been submitted, and you still can't access it, then try contacting the tech support numbers. You can shoot me an email as well, and I can just make sure that your exam has actually gone through. But I think most people, you shouldn't have too much trouble with it. All right, so for next time then, just to be clear, And okay. And Diane, and for yes, for Diane, you said it was in the assignment two section. Okay, so have a look under the assignment two. It should be somewhere in the transcript, right? Um, my my I'm a little surprised it appeared after assignment two, but have a look in the transcript there and see what's going on. If you've completed everything, it's nowhere to be found in the transcript. Then check the learner guide and get in touch and see if they can figure it out. Okay. And for you, it was just below the exam, Valerie. Then, um, yeah. So the pass criteria. Okay. So again, and again, this is also in the learner guide. If you uh, 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 if you forget. So for the entire course, it needs to be a total of 70% uh, based on all three of your assignments. So one of your assignments can be below 70%. That's okay, so long as the total of all three altogether gives you more than 70%. 70% is a pass, and if you want to be considered for work with H&R Block, we would be looking for an 80%, and obviously we would look closely. So if you got really high on both assignments, but you had a really bad mark on the exam, we would think carefully about that. But what we're looking for in general is just 80% in the entire course. So if you get 79% on the exam, but you scored 100% on both assignments, that's probably all right. Okay, so for next time, and yes, if you had a concern with a question and you've sent it to me, yes, I'm still looking at that. Some of those were due to a typo in an earlier version. Um, sometimes uh, sometimes it's a misinterpretation of the question. I need to look at each and every one of them and see what happened there. And if it's the case that you had the correct answer, then I can manually change that. Sometimes I do have people who, in fact, have the wrong answer, but I do still look at it and say, okay, was this question ambiguous? Was there some other issue going on there? So, but each of them does take time because for each one, I pull up the questions, I look at the answer key, and I see, okay, what's gone on here. So yeah, it just takes me time to work through all of them. That's all. But if you've emailed me about it, I do have your email. I will be going through it. Those of you who have downloaded this online, however, you need to take this up with your instructor directly because I can't help you with that. All right. So for next time, please work through case study 1-1 for your province, and it will be a button. Look in your learner guide. There will be a button called submit. So complete the return and then submit it. These are not for marks. I want to stress that. Submit simply lets us know that you've done them, and we can have a look at them conceivably. But it's not the case that they're being marked. There is no software exam currently in this course, and the software exercises are simply on a incomplete basis. So don't worry too much about them. But we do want to know that you have worked through them. Okay. And Muhammad says you want to write the second exam, but before you get consent from the instructor, you shouldn't need my consent to write the exam a second time. Just go ahead and write it. I never heard of anyone needing my consent to write the exam a second time. You get 2 tries of the exam. unless you score 100% the first time, in which case you don't need to write it a second time. But if you are getting a strange email message, just send that to me, okay? If you're having trouble writing the exam or anything like that. Okay, send me a screenshot and I can figure it out. But yes, you have my consent. This is not a case where I need to sign off on your ability to take it a second time. So I'm but send me a screenshot so I can see what you're seeing, and if necessary, I can contact tech support. All right. But on that note, students, please have fun with the software, play around with it, explore, test it, drive it, see how it works, and we will get back together in a week, and we will discuss everything. And Mohammed, you're saying you've already done it twice, but the exam is still marked as finished. Send me an email and I'll have a look at it. I think your scores are probably registered. If they're in our database, then I have the scores. It may simply be that I haven't marked them as complete, because that's something I do at the end of the course. But I'm not sure what students are seeing there. But I have had a couple people email and say, hey, I did the exam. Why isn't it showing that I've done it? And then I go and I look at our database and I'm like, well, your score is right here and you passed. So I'm not sure what they're seeing. So, but anyway, if you're concerned that the system may not have registered your score, please get in touch. All right. But on that note, everybody, we're going to draw to a close for this evening. All of you who've downloaded this online, please have yourself a good week. Enjoy the software. I will talk to you guys next time. All right. Take care, everybody. And remember, if you've got issues with your exams or anything like that, contact your instructor or the tech support at the contact information listed in the learner guide. Okay? All right. Have a good night, all of you online. And we will pause our recording there.